Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Drew Ramsey, and I have a really special guest. I'm fangirling a little bit. We have with us Dr. Jessica Bays. Well, almost Dr. Jessica Bays. Jessica is finishing her graduate degree, heading into a postdoc, but she is the lead author of the AMMEND trial. And so, and we're going to talk all about it. Jessica's joining us from Australia, where it's the middle of the night. But Jessica, welcome. It's such a treat to have you with us and to get to have a conversation about this super awesome piece of science that you've created.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and I'm so excited to talk to you today.
So you're at the School of Public Health at the University of Technology in Sydney, and this trial, the AMMEND trial, for everybody, it is looking at young men who don't have good eating habits, but they're also depressed. Will you tell us a little bit what got you interested in looking at depressed young men with bad eating habits? Isn't that all of them?
Yeah, pretty much. And we had we did some research prior to this where called the MEND survey, where we looked at the diets of young men with depression to see what they were like and found that, yes, they were really, really bad. So there's lots of room for improvements there, definitely.
It seems all the nutritional psychiatry data we've been seeing has really looked at how ultra processed foods, a diet of, what young men often like to eat, fast food, energy drinks, foods that advertise maybe a lot of protein, that tends to correlate with a much higher risk of depression. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the men in your trial. You had 72 participants go through your trial, and they were all younger men who had bad eating habits. Can you tell us a little bit about them and what they were like?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, they were young men. So they were between 18 and 25 years of age, and they had been diagnosed with moderate to severe clinical depression. And yes, they had poor diets. However, them having poor diets wasn't a particularly strict criteria for the trial, is in it didn't really exclude too many people. We didn't really have anyone that had good diets that we said, oh, your diet is too good, you can't join. So it was quite representative, I think, of a lot of the sort of diets that most young men do eat. And you're right, it's lots of junk food, lots of processed foods. Some of them were living in sort of student accommodation at universities where they didn't even have access to kitchens or a fridge, those sorts of things. Some of them didn't even own a frying pan or any basic cooking equipment, those sorts of things. So sort of healthy eating and cooking was such a foreign concept to so many of them. So we were asking them to do something really huge, really,
Yeah,
really huge.
and I want to hear how that happened, but I just want to quickly drop the results in because everybody watching is wondering what happened. And what happens, and I want to hear how Jessica did this and her team. But what happens is 36% of the men go into full remission. And that is the holy grail in depression work. And this then follows up the SMILES trial, where individuals with depression were given 7 nutritional counseling sessions, and 32.3% of that sample went into full remission. So, Jessica, these men had nothing, a lot of them. They're horrible eating habits. When I say, hey, guys, eat more plants, eat more veggies, it's going to help your mood. I don't think we imagine that young men jump to it, start cooking, start eating. How did you help these men change their habits?
I know, and we were doing it during global pandemic as well, and there's a lot going on. There's in Australia, I know people were sort of panic buying, so a lot of things you could get in the food in the shops. So there were all these additional challenges as well, with lockdowns and all the things we were going through. So the fact that they did this is just mind-blowing, but it really does show that if they can do it, anybody can. And I think that was one of the things that some of the feedback that we got from these young men being involved in the study, because we were looking at them specifically. They felt quite heard and seen and kind of valued. And so many of them said, oh, there's no research on people like me, so I want to contribute. I want to give this a go, to try and help others, which was a really nice kind of altruistic thing.
One wonderful attribute that I think we're seeing in more and more young men, this notion that they're not seen and heard, and which is surprising with all of the privilege we think of men having. But there's a in some ways a pain of being a young man today, or a trauma of that, having some needs, to get a little help. And Jessica,
Absolutely.
you,
Absolutely. And
go ahead.
yeah, and there still is so much stigma around mental health for young men as well.
Will you tell
You
us a
know,
little bit? There aren't, I mean, I don't know that folks are aware of this, but there's really not much data or research on male mental health. I mean, look at how, as a psychiatrist or physician, I should approach or think about treating men differently. There's almost nothing in the literature when we look at specific trials treating men, helping us understand what's different about how you treat men than women. When you look at male mental health centers, right, that generally focuses on erections, prostate, baldness, I would say like not the most interesting parts of me as a man, to be honest. And so there's a need for more work and research like this. Since you've sat with so many of them, tell us, what do these depressed young men say?
absolutely. So of the very limited research that I could find before going into this, it said that men tend to have a preference for action and doing and those sorts of things. So I thought diet would fit really nicely into that, in that it's not just sitting and talking to something, but it's something they can actually go out and do, and action, and have goals that they're working towards and things like that. And talking to a lot of these young guys, it was very personalized to them and their needs, and meeting them at their cooking level and their level of engagement and what they wanted to get out of it. And it was really driven by them in terms of, do you need recipes? Do you want examples? What are you struggling with? How can we make this easier for you? So that really sort of personalized medicine sort of approach.
Well, also, it feels that as a nutritionist, in our clinic, we have a coach and a chef who provide some of those services. It feels that it's an approach in medicine that we've struggled with, that we want to give advice and have people enact behavioral change because it's good evidence-based advice. And I feel that what your field understands is that meeting people where they are, but really understanding there are a variety of limitations. It's not that people just want to make bad choices and processed food taste delicious, or that, cooked meals are expensive. So the men were eager to get some engagement, and then to get very personalized attention. One of the things in your protocol you talk about is how you initially wanted to, like the SMILES trial, talk to the men for a number of sessions. I think it was 7 in your initial, or 8. You ended up only having 2 sessions with them. And
Yes.
what kind of magic did you do in those sessions that all of a sudden these 72 young men are like, yeah, I'm going to eat a Mediterranean diet?
Yeah, so the plan changed quite a few times, and we met with them as we were developing the protocol, and said to them, okay, what do you think about the design of this trial? We know that recruiting for any clinical study is really, really hard, and we know that recruiting men into clinical studies is really, really hard. And then given that they're young men and that they have clinical depression as well, I'm thinking this is going to be a really, really hard thing for us to do. So let's get them on board and say, what can we do to make this more appealing to you? What can we do and change about this study to make you want to join and make you be more likely to follow it all the way through? And the advice that kept coming up was, that's too many appointments. That seems like a really big commitment. I don't know if I could do that. Less would be better, knowing that you're there if we need you, but just kind of give us what we need to do and let us go off and do our own thing, and know that you're there if we need an extra helping hand.
You kept track of the young men and what they were eating with a you call it a widget, a little app.
Yeah.
And did that help them? Were they like, give me the recipes, tell me what to do, and watch what happens? I mean, did they feel?
I found that they kind of fell into 2 camps. They were in the, oh, that was, annoying, and I had to remember to do it, and it was a bit of a chore. And then there were the people who finished it that said, can I keep doing it? It was good. I got into a habit. It was a routine. It got me thinking about food in a way that I never had before. And so they kind of, I guess on personality type, they either fell into one or the other.
Yeah, I find that absolutely tracking does help. I've had some patients And I've heard stories where people, are able to change a behavior just by starting, a tracking app where they just, they've got 13, 82, 118 days that they haven't engaged in whatever, and it helps. And so that, what did you gave the young men a food hamper, a tracking widget, 2 sessions that were personalized, but it was just one session that got them started, and then you followed up. How much
Yep,
time?
right. So in the initial consultation, they got quite a lot of resources as well. So they had, the basic guidelines of the types of foods we wanted them to have, and the serving size and portions and what they look like for certain food groups, and
You have
some
like a little
examples.
model, or would you do pictures, or what was your?
Yeah, so like a serving of fruit equals, one apple or a handful of grapes, or kind of a few examples for each of the groups, like whole grains and things, and vegetables and things like that. And then we gave them things like pantry swaps. So, swapping your white bread for brown bread, and this brand for this brand of muesli bars or whatever it might be. We had some sort of eating on a budget tips. So for those that were sort of conscious around money, okay, what are some cheaper, healthier options? Even, if you find yourself out in a food court, or needing to order off of Uber Eats, what do you pick? What are the better options? So we really tried to make it as foolproof, and I called boy friendly as possible, in terms of things that were simple and easy and you just couldn't get wrong.
That's great. It also feels like instead of there being like no processed foods, it was a notion of, hey, there are some, a granola bar with oats in it, and some, nuts and raisins is healthier than a candy bar, and helping them.
Exactly.
Yeah, these are some. I mean, we love the simple swaps, and we put together a download of Brain Food on a Budget that's on our site, just because of the same. So there's so much this question of like, eating healthy costs too much, or it's expensive, or complicated, and the SMILES trial, as you know, showed the exact opposite, that people who engage in these behaviors save money. So
exactly right. And sort of asking them as well, based on everything we've talked about, what do you think you could have for breakfast, and getting them to come up with the ideas as well. So it was things that they already like to eat, and asking them, okay, what do you foresee any problems with doing this? What are the challenges you can foresee? So we could kind of troubleshoot those things beforehand. Yeah, we
what did
just
it say?
tried to do everything we could.
No, well, it sounds like they saw that you wanted to make sure that the young men felt seen. You also had a sense of understanding that they were depressed. Were most of them in some sort of clinical care, or were a lot of them just, this is the first time they were addressing their depression?
Yeah, so in terms of the distribution amongst the diet group and the befriending group, it was pretty similar in terms of those that were on antidepressants or were seeing a counselor. So it was pretty split over the two, and I think it was about 30% for each. But I did just sort of anecdotally have a lot of people say, oh, my doctor wants to put me on antidepressants. I'm not sure about it. I saw your trial. I thought I'd give this a go first. And then if it doesn't work, I'll go and take the antidepressants. And then they would say at the end, I no longer have depression. I don't need to do that anymore. This has been life-changing, which is, I mean, there's no higher compliment than that.
Well, it was a remarkable change. You took the young men, in average, they had a Mediterranean diet pattern score of about 3, and increased them by 8 points. I think it looked like about to 11, which is a reasonable or significant increase. Obviously, on a 15 point scale, 14-point scale, I think. What when you looked at kind of what the boys did, the boy-friendly did, that really got the Mediterranean diet score up. And I'm kind of asking this for all the parents out there, all the moms who are like, gosh, I've been telling my kid to eat healthy forever. What were the things that really increased their score?
Oh, if I had to pick the top things that increase their score, probably vegetables.
And were there favorites? Were the ones that kind of like stuck out to you? Like, oh, this is like boys like this.
Oh, I would always say don't eat vegetables you don't like. Eat the ones that you're going to eat the ones you're going to enjoy, and really let them choose. But some had never tried certain things, and they would get so excited, say, oh, I had a sweet potato for the first time ever, and they would get so excited, and it was just wonderful.
Oh, Jessica, I love that too. I see a lot of young men, and there's a way that, they try pesto for the first time. They come in like, that stuff was good, doc. That pesto stuff, it's like really. Or I had a young man eat cashews for the first time ever. We were just talking about nuts and seeds. He's like, what's a cashew? And it was just nice I felt in that kind of safe space of mental health aware, mental health oriented care. It's wonderful to be with people as they explore. So help them
Absolutely.
enjoy the vegetables that they like. If you like potatoes, that's okay. Don't have French fries, but potatoes, broccoli, whatever it is. If you don't like broccoli, don't feel forced to do that. Find other things.
Exactly right. And some obviously far more experimental than others, and were just down for trying, zucchini noodles and cauliflower rice and all the things. And others were not quite there yet. But I found things that they found quite easy was adding the olive oil in. They quite enjoyed that when they realized that that was something that they could have.
What would they put it on? Would they just like take shots of it, or what would they do?
I know, because you could have, I think it was 3 tablespoons. It's just for someone that doesn't have those sorts of things quite a lot.
Mhm.
But I found quite a lot of them were having really nice seeded wholemeal bread and just dipping it
Dipping
in
it
there
in
and having
the
that as a, yep, exactly.
I've
So that
been,
went down
a lot of
well.
times when I come home, we'll put like some veggies out with a little like olive oil or a little salad
Mm,
dressing. And it sounds like putting a thing of olive oil with like it's a high quality whole grain bread there is something that would help the kids, help these young men get their scores up. What were some olive oil, eat more plants? Were there some other things?
yeah. And then the other one that I think most of them had never had or rarely had was legumes. So many of them had never had lentils, had never had chickpeas. I'm like, oh, we've got to get you having some falafel and hummus and all the things.
Yeah,
So I think that's one.
I love prescribing those to young men just because they're easy. Things like hummus, such a great, healthy, easy snack. How did the young men respond to that?
So at first, as soon as I said sort of like beans and legumes, you'd see them sort of go, oh, because they're thinking, oh, that's just baked beans, that sort of thing. And then when I'm
Uh-huh.
explaining to them all the different variety and how you can add them into things, and I just throw them in stir fries and curries and
Mhm.
everything. You can put them in anything, and you can sort of see their minds going, oh, I never thought of this, and it's so cheap and easy. And yeah, I mean, I love hummus. I put hummus on everything.
Did you do any like visual recording or having them like take pictures of their food, or was it the widget, or is there a way that they'd share meals or what they were doing with you?
Not an official way we would record it, but many of them were so proud and excited of the meals and things they were cooking that they were sharing them.
Oh, it's so fun to see some of those pictures. I love those pictures I get from my patients when you talk about something, or when they have a big mess of seafood in front of them and they say, oh, like feed my brain. It's a nice acknowledgement that there's been a shared understanding that this is one of those things that matters. I've always felt that the big opportunity in nutritional psychiatry is in prevention. And it's interesting that for a lot of those young men are framing it as in some ways preventing going on medications, as a third of them get fully out of the depression. But I also feel mostly the hope is just preventing mental health challenges and symptoms. I was wondering if you have a sense of longer term how the men shifted in their thinking. A lot of them come out of the depression, they're eating olive oil. In your exit interview, because your last meeting with them, your third meeting was like, this intervention's done. What were they thinking about? How do they sound about their future and themselves as an eater?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got them to do a end of trial evaluation, which is under peer review. So that'll be hopefully published soon, and you'll be able to see what we found. But just sort of chatting to them, every single one said this has been life changing. That this is this has been amazing. We asked them, did you think that this was going to impact your mental health? And quite a lot of them said, oh, I don't really know, or I don't think so. So then to see the impact that it did have at the end kind of was very surprising to a lot of them. I think it's quite easy to forget how bad you felt. And then when you kind of look at the data and you can see how far you've come, that can be really quite eye-opening for a lot of people. Going, oh yeah, I did feel that bad then. And wow, look how far I've come in just, 12 weeks. This is crazy.
It's an important use of treatment. I think sometimes people and even clinicians neglect that holding space and being with people to remind them, no, this is what you sounded like. I like to quote patients, or I put what they say. I feel their words capture it the best sometimes. Like, oh, you remember when you said, it was like felt dark everywhere, something like that, where it really helps them appreciate what they've done. I mean, it's a massive shift in diet. Seafood is a big challenge. It's one of those nutritional psychiatry food categories that's important, where we look for the long chain omega-3 fats, but also just a lot of nutrient density, lots of zinc and B12, selenium, iodine, lots of good protein, all that stuff. How are these young men with seafood? And it was you gave them a food hamper, and so will you talk to us a little about seafood and food hampers?
Yeah, so seafood was something that a few of them did struggle with. So it was around finding, I think there was, again, it's about education. A lot of people have this perception, just like they thought the Mediterranean diet just meant salad, that they think when you add fish in, that just means grilled fish and veggies. And it's quite boring. And I'm like, no, let's, think of all the different foods that we can add seafood to, and all the different variety of different things that this might be and what this might look like. And just keep trying until you find something that, you enjoy. It doesn't just have to be grilled fish on the side with nothing on it. So I think as soon as we would start suggesting all of these different ways of getting it in, you can kind of see them going, oh yeah, I could have, fish tacos, or I could have, it in this, in a stew, or in a curry, or all these things that they hadn't previously thought of. It then went down quite well. And it was just like the example with the vegetables, of them saying, oh, I made this with prawns, yay, I didn't realize that would count. So again, it's just very heartwarming to see that.
Yeah, it seems like a big part of the intervention reminds us that connecting with young men, being curious about their mental health, being curious about them as eaters, and helping them develop some skills really goes a long way. There was Dr. Sibrit and Jessica Bays, who I'm speaking with, and their group showed it was an 8-point increase in the Mediterranean dietary score, led to a 20-point decrease in a Beck depression inventory, which is just, taking a lot of individuals completely from horribly depressed to just in full remission. So it's an amazing and exciting finding. I'm wondering if people are now scared to go out to dinner with you and eat with you.
No. No, but just kind of going back to what you were saying before about how did they feel at the end, there were a few comments where people would say things like, I now know what I can do if I can feel my mental health slipping again, that they know that this is a skills and resources that they've learned, that if they can feel themselves sort of dipping down and getting depressed again, that they can just pull out these skills again, which I think is really good. We would ask them, do you think you'll continue with this? And they say, oh, I might not do it 100% all the time, but 90% of this, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to continue with it. And I just know that I have these skills and I have this ability in me to feel better, which I just think, is amazing and just worth mentioning.
I think it's very important, worth mentioning, and also how on the clinical side, I see nutritional psychiatry often work, that as people begin to slip, there not only is a possible explanation, right? I'm not feeling as well, in part because I'm not taking care of myself, I'm not eating well. But there's also a solution that people feel some confidence in. Right, I'm gonna try this. I don't expect it to work amazingly, in terms of I feel great tomorrow, but I know it's an action that both the data and my personal lived experience tell me help me feel better. And now suddenly you're working on feeling better, and I think we all feel more empowered, as opposed to I'm feeling worse. I don't know why. I don't know what to do. I don't know what it is. Like that's a terrifying feeling. Right? There's nothing worse than
Yeah.
we.
Absolutely. And it kind of gives you that agency back as well, and go, this is something I have control over, and it's, something I can do to try and help myself. And that, yeah, it boosts your self-esteem and all of the psychological things that go with knowing that you're taking care of your body and those sorts of things.
Well, Jessica, it's been such a treat to speak with you. Thank you for going into all these details of your study. I want you to leave this. If you are talking to a parent or a clinician, they've got a grumpy adolescent young man in front of them who's eating a candy bar and sipping an energy drink, and you just don't think in any way he's somebody who'd want to change their diet, what would you tell that parent or clinician?
I would tell them that it's not an all or nothing, that these small, tiny little habits, these small little increments can all add up to a big change over time, and to start slowly and persevere.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much. It's a treat to meet you. Thank you for your work. We look forward to following your research. Thank you for contributing to both the world of male mental health, but also the world and research of nutritional psychiatry. That definitely makes me a big fan of yours. And so I look forward to seeing all the work that you continue to do. Thanks so much.
Thank you.